throughout this unit, we've been using our standard equation for proportional relationship of y equals kx. We also have been thinking about part to part and part to whole a lot. And so this unit, this investigation here, where we're trying to apply the ideas of tax and tip, can come into play as we look at different restaurants. And so, for example, I've got this is not a restaurant, a receipt. That's the word I'm looking for. A receipt given at a restaurant. And you can see sort of what time I was there. We don't care about that stuff. We can see what was ordered, the subtotal, and then the tax, and then the total. And so we can see on here, we've got this check that's coming, and it says we also need to pay $3.99 in sales tax. So I'm going to highlight this part or circle this part right here for sales tax. And if now I want to know what percentage of the subtotal is the sales tax, that's where we can think about using this part to whole equation. So I can simply write that as $3.99 divided by, well, my subtotal is going to be, I want to use there. And so we want to be mindful I'm not using the total yet because that $3.99 hasn't been factored in just yet. And so I want to do out of the earlier total, if that makes sense. And so you can absolutely use a calculator. That's fine. I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head. So use a calculator. And so when I divide that, I'm going to get 0.095. And so we think about that as a percentage. Well, that's going to be, again, I'm multiplying times 100, 9.5%. So what percentage of the subtotal is sales tax? Great, it's 9.5%. And so now we see this next question here, where we have that after tax the total is $45.99, this information down here, what percentage of that subtotal is the total? And so there's two ways I can think about this. One way I can think about, okay, what fraction or what proportion of this subtotal is the total? And so one way I might compare that is doing a part to part, so $45.99 divided by 42.0. That's one way I could establish that. I could also think about that I know my subtotal plus my percentage of my tax rate will be my new. And so I can think of this would be like 100%. This would be my 9.5%. And so I could use this y equals kx situation where I can take y equals the 109, no, what is that? Yeah, 109.5, right, of 42 would get me to that 45% right there. And so either way, if I divide the part to part or I use the y equal kx situation, I'm going to get that same information, that they have that same relationship. And so maybe I'll write this down here, that 45.99 divided by 42 is 109.5 or 109.5%. Right? So either way I wanted to think about it. Again, thinking about this total as a function of a 100% plus that 109%, or dividing the part to part. If now down here I have a situation where we're actually paying $52.99 for tip, right? This is additional $7 tip. If I wanted to know what percentage of the subtotal is the tip, and this is where, again, I'm thinking about that part to whole. And so I need to come back to my part to whole. That's the whole I'm looking at right there. And so I can simply take 7 divided by 42. And if I get on my calculator, I can get 0.167 or 16.7%. So big takeaways from this portion of the lesson so far is you want to be really mindful when you're doing part to part or part to whole is which whole are you looking at? Are you looking at an initial subtotal or are you looking at a later one? And be really thoughtful. These questions are begging you to do a close read of underlining key parts, highlighting key information. Other way we can think about it is that when we're going from subtotal to total, that's going to be that percent increase. And so we have 100% initially plus the tax rate. So in this problem down here, now we've got a tax rate at this restaurant is 9.5%. Maybe it's the same restaurant. We don't know, but they have the same sales tax. And so what we're looking at down here is trying to figure out if this person's subtotal is $24.95, how much will their sales tax be? And so we can sort of write that equation and thinking about, okay, I need to take $24.95 and I'm going to multiply that by 9%, so 0.095. Remember, 9%, we can convert that to a decimal of 0.95. And so if I use my calculator, again, I'm fine as long as if you're using a calculator, so you show me that step-by-step thinking. I'm going to get 2.37025. So I'm going to say that's $2.37. So that's how much sales tax they would be paying. Now in this one down here, they have given me that sales tax, but now I want to go the other way. And so I can use that sort of basic equation I had up here. But I know this number, my sales tax hasn't changed, and now I'm just trying to plug in for this portion of the equation, right? And so another way I could think about it, again, using that y equals kx, now they've given me the sales tax, this y over here, so now I know that's $1.61. Well, I need to know that what the original value was multiplied times my sales tax. So I'm plugging in my sales tax. That would be my K value, right? My constant proportionality is the thing I'm multiplying by. And so just be really mindful when you're solving equations that you plug it into the right portion of the equation. So the best strategy I have for you is to really slow down and ask myself, like, am I solving for the dependent or the independent variable? Like, have they given me the initial value or the subtotal or the new total? And so if I wanted to figure out, okay, how much was their subtotal? Well, now I think about what's the math that's happening between this 0.095 and x. Oh, it's multiplication. The inverse operation of that is division. Any number divided by itself is 1, so I can make that disappear. And now, again, I'm going to use my calculator because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But it's going to be about $16.95. Kind of depending on how you thought about your rounding, you would kind of get in any one of those ranges. So again, big takeaways for this lesson. Be very careful when you're plugging things into this y equals kx or the part to whole, part to part situation to make sure you're plugging things into the portion of the equation. So one way to help do that is think about the total is what percentage of the subtotal. And using those keywords like of makes me think of multiplying, equals makes me think of is.